James O'Brien on LBC.
11:48 is the time, and it is to the United States that we turn our attention next. And as ever, Simon Marks will be our Sherpa as we negotiate the mountainous territory of US politics. I suppose we should begin with the breaking news, or the very recent news, that the former Vice President Dick Cheney has passed away. A significant figure, Simon, in US politics, to say the least.
Absolutely, James. A figure whose political experience can be traced all the way back to Richard Nixon's White House, which is where he first worked. He had a job also under former President Gerald Ford, and then, of course, stood for Congress from Wyoming and rose through the ranks of the Republican Party, eventually to be pulled back into politics from a business career. Remember, he was the chief executive officer of Halliburton, one of the nation's largest businesses, supportive largely of the Republican Party, and he was brought back from that to become George W. Bush's vice president. We all used to think of Dick Cheney as being the Prince of Darkness of American politics. Indeed, he reveled in the fact that people used to compare him to Darth Vader. He didn't push back against those descriptions whatsoever, and he did indeed appear during his time as George W. Bush's vice president to be someone who was absolutely determined to push the boundaries of presidential power in the United States further than anyone had pushed them in the past. And certainly he was often portrayed as being the brains behind the George W. Bush political operation. I was never entirely sure that that was a completely fair assessment. But nonetheless, Dick Cheney dying at the age of 84 presents an issue for the current president of the United States, Donald Trump, who is pushing the powers of the presidency way beyond anything Dick Cheney even imagined. And the challenge is that, of course, there have been tremendous tensions between Donald Trump and the Cheney family as a result of Dick Cheney's daughter, Liz Cheney, co-chairing the January the 6th committee up on Capitol Hill that looked into the insurrection, the deadly riots by Donald Trump's supporters on January the 6th, 2021. And Dick Cheney's last appearance publicly in the US Congress was to walk into the building alongside his daughter Liz, an act of support for her, symbolising his determination to back her as she tried to hold Donald Trump accountable for those January the 6th riots, an effort that ultimately we now know failed. But there is no love lost between Donald Trump and the Cheney family. And Dick Cheney, as a former vice president, I mean, one would imagine there will be conversations about whether he should lie in repose in the Capitol Rotunda. I mean, there were many Republicans, very few of them of the Donald Trump ilk, who really revered Dick Cheney as a political leader and the kind of tough guy. You know, he was one of the architects of the war on Iraq that America needed in the aftermath of 9/11. So complicated days after this announcement by the Cheney family that Dick Cheney is dead at the age of 84.
Yes, and I mean, you're right to remind us how far the Republican Party has moved away from what he represented, even when he was considered as an extremist within the sort of party fold, because Liz Cheney became not just a critic of Donald Trump, but a focal point for criticism of Donald Trump from within the Republican movement, a cohort that's more or less disappeared from public discourse now.
Absolutely. Liz Cheney has disappeared largely from public discourse. I think it's really important to underscore that Dick Cheney's death again reveals how far the Republican Party has shifted. Let me tell you something Dick Cheney never did. He never shut the American government down for 35 days. As of today, this is the longest government shutdown in history, the second longest government shutdown in history, the one orchestrated by Donald Trump back in 2018, which lasted 34 days. Something that Dick Cheney did do was at least support President George W. Bush as he made historic, unprecedented, developmental and humanitarian assistance expenditures and interventions in Africa. That's not something that Donald Trump's done. He's completely eviscerated the US Agency for International Development, something from which Dick Cheney would absolutely have recoiled. So this remaking of the United States that Donald Trump is leading, it takes the country down a path that is absolutely different to the path down which Dick Cheney, former CEO of Halliburton, the man who encouraged George W. Bush to go ahead with the invasion of Iraq, despite those critiques that are widespread of Dick Cheney's time as Vice President of the United States, he didn't come close to being a Make America Great Again Republican, and absolutely eschewed the direction in which Donald Trump has taken this country.
We may have time to have a little look at some of the recent developments in that direction that Donald Trump has taken this country. But let's talk first about the election today, or not just one election. There's a few elections, isn't there? The mayor race in New York City, and then gubernatorial contests in Virginia and New Jersey. What's the significance?
Well, first of all, anytime you get real voters casting actual votes, it does give you a pretty reliable barometer, at least of what people in those three locations, New York City, Virginia and New Jersey, are thinking. And the Democrats are obviously hoping to pull off wins in all three races today, plus also a ballot proposition out in California that would allow Gavin Newsom to redraw congressional boundaries and boost the number of seats that Democrats can count on in next year's midterm elections in response to Republican gerrymandering that has been taking place in other states. All eyes, of course, are on New York City. Zoran Mamdani, the Democrat socialist who is running for mayor of New York. He wants to make the buses free in New York. He wants to extend rent regulation on more than 1 million properties. He's talking about opening 5 city-owned supermarkets in a bid to try and bring food prices down. He is anathema to Donald Trump and to the captains of industry and commerce and finance in New York City, but he's also someone that many Democratic Party grandees are keeping at arm's length. Take a listen to what Hillary Clinton had to say the other day. She was asked who she's planning to vote for in the New York City mayoral race.
You know what? I don't vote in this city. I'm not involved in it. I have not, been at all even asked to be involved in it, and I have not chosen to be involved in it.
She was talking there to the Unholy podcast, which explores issues pertaining to the Jewish community around the world and also to the relationship that various countries have with Israel. Zoran Mamdani, of course, is about to become the first Muslim Indian-American Democratic Socialist mayor of New York. So take a listen to what happened next on that Unholy podcast.
Do the Jews in the city have a reason to be concerned?
We'll have to see what happens. I hope not. I do not believe that we are able to predict what's going to happen. I can't sit here and tell you.
It's an extraordinary answer, that, because it really reveals the depth of anxiety that elites within the Democratic Party have about this firebrand young radical who is about to become the next mayor of New York City. He's going to win by a massive margin, we think, tonight. And he's really sending a message to the Democratic Party writ large that the party has to change. And people like Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the New York senator who leads Democrats in the United States Senate, they've all kept him at arm's length because they are deeply concerned that that kind of populist left-wing radical is going to become a galvanizing figure for young grassroots Democrats and really challenge the elites within the party and tell them it's time for them to push off.
So I sort of, we're seeing something similar here in a way, as if the established opposition has lost the room almost, and that the I choose my words carefully because we haven't seen him in action yet, and some of what he's said and done has been very impressive. but the perceived maverick hoovers up votes because people are sick of the status quo.
Yes, but there is a real challenge coming for the Democratic Party arising out of these elections, because if you go just south of us here in Washington, D.C. to Virginia, the Democrat who is expected to win that race for the gubernatorial mansion tonight is a centrist, Abigail Spanberger. And she has literally said, she's on a leaked audio tape to prominent Democrats, that the party needs to stop even using the word socialist, that the word socialist is a complete switch off to the country. And if you carry on going out there and campaigning from the left and talking about being a socialist, you are going to lose the next election cycle. Well, she's going to become, we think, the next governor of Virginia tonight. So there's mixed messages coming from Democrats. On the one hand, in New York City, they're about to embrace someone of the left who describes himself as a democratic socialist. In Virginia, more conservative state to be sure, they are coalescing around a centrist figure who has said we shouldn't even be using these words, these buzz phrases that turn voters off. So the party's going to emerge from this off-year election, I think, in an even more confused state than it went into it, searching for leaders, but also still having to have an internal conversation with itself about what kind of path it wants to put itself on if it's ever going to combat Donald Trump's Make America Great Again populism.
Fascinating. I mean, genuinely fascinating, and all the more reason to speak to you soon about how things unfold. But of course, you could, or the United States could be at war with Nigeria by that point.
Absolutely astonishing. This announcement by President Trump on his social media channel over the weekend came seemingly out of nowhere, accusing the Nigerian government of standing by while Christians are being massacred in the country. We know that that message was fueled in part by Republican Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, who himself has focused extensively on what is taking place in Nigeria. But what is actually taking place in Nigeria certainly is seeing the murder of a large number of Christians in the country, but it's also seeing the murder of an even larger number of Muslims in Nigeria who are equally being targeted by Boko Haram and other Islamic fundamentalist terror groups. For them, not a solitary word was expressed by Donald Trump on Saturday as he threatened to send the US military in to Nigeria to kill the Islamic fundamentalists that he claims are responsible for massacring Christians. And he put the Nigerian government on notice. The government, he said, better act fast, otherwise the military's coming. If you're a Make America Great Again supporter and you've backed the concept of Donald Trump being the peacemaker who's not going to get involved in far-off and distant conflicts about which we know very little, I mean, you'd think that Nigeria might tick those boxes, but on Saturday, he certainly was very focused on it.
Well, at least we can all agree he has. What's the running total now? He has ended 406 wars. Is that right?
and mounting.
And counting. Simon Marks, many thanks indeed. Live from Washington, D.C., where American politics, US politics, shows no sign of calming down anytime soon. It's 12:01.